Well, it's here. Proposition 19 is here. Regardless if you voted for it or not, how does this affect you? That's what we're talking about right now. This is Vito Scarnecchio with the Albatano Group, powered by Coldwell Banker. Today we have the honor and privilege of talking with Maggie LaBranch Gonzalez, who works with the Litherland, Kennedy and Associates Attorney Group.
Yes.
Did I say that right?
Yes.
Close enough?
Close enough. Perfect.
All right. So let's go and talk about, well, good or bad, you know, Proposition 19 is here, right? And we voted for it 51-48 or something like that. And
it was close, yes.
It was really close. And I think a lot of people didn't understand the effects of what was going to happen. And that's really why I asked you to come on the show today, is so that we can talk a little bit about the good things and the bad things and how it affects homeowners, landlords, inheritees. Right?
Yeah. Yep.
So, Maggie, do you want to introduce yourself and talk about yourself a little bit?
Sure. Okay. Hi, everyone. I'm Maggie LaBranch Gonzalez. I am an attorney with Litherland, Kennedy and Associates. I've been practicing law for about 10 years, more than 10 years now. Hit my decade. Woo. Yay. So I only practice in estate planning. I have some experience in other things, but I really enjoy estate planning. And for me, it's all about planning for the inevitable, right? I mean, Vito, you know this. We're all going to die. I'm sorry I had to say it. Everyone's going to die. So really,
shudder at the thought.
I know, right? I think everyone's turned off their camera now. No, but it's all about planning for the inevitable, but also planning for the unknown. For me, the most important part about estate planning is what's going to happen between now and when you pass away. We don't know. Is there going to be a freak accident? And Vito, you and I have talked about this. Both of our families have been touched by Alzheimer's. Mm-hmm. So if you don't have the capacity to make those financial decisions, to make the health decisions, who's going to be making those for you? And if you don't have a plan in place, the judge in a court of law is going to be making those decisions for you. And it could be somebody you wanted. It could be your spouse. It could be your child. It could be the child you don't want to do it, right? Mm-hmm. But you don't know because you won't have a choice. So doing an estate plan, you have all of that under your control. So if something does happen, you've got a plan.
Right.
So that's the important part for me.
You know, a lot of people know this about us, my family. We lost my mother-in-law and my grandfather-in-law within 7 days of each other a few years back. It was probably 7 years back. And, you know, I always use the story about how the grandfather, Percy, was completely dialed in. He had people focused on, he had his trust set up. He had his legacy plan set up. He had everything really just completely dialed in. And, you know, my mother-in-law, which she died at early 60s, late 50s of early onset Alzheimer's and dementia. And it caught them by storm, and it didn't financially ruin them. It took a huge financial toll. Now, you got to go, okay, well, what about the emotional toll? What about all the other things that went along with it? Yes, that's absolutely everything to do with it. But, and I saw my wife have to go through this and deal with 2 deaths within 7 days of each other. But what I saw from the outside, because truly I was an outsider, I saw 2 different people pass away from the same disease. And one was completely set up and ready to leave his legacy, where the other one scared the living hell out of me because I saw what it did to my father-in-law's financial capabilities. Right now, he's been made whole again. I mean, it's never always perfect, but he's regained his financial independence again. But it took a huge toll on him, and for years I searched for what a trust can do for us, or I knew that there was answers. And in the meantime, I saw many friends that have their parents die and wither away from Alzheimer's and dementia. And I saw all this stuff that was happening to them. And I met with Deidre Jies at an event that I held, and she works with your group, and we were talking, and I was coming up with these questions. She's like, you need to sit down and meet with Roy Litherland and go through that seminar. So we did. And when my wife and I showed up, all those questions that I had asked like 6 other lawyers, and all they could say is, yeah, we take care of that. Yeah. And what Roy and the group was talking about at the time was they were answering questions before I even knew I had questions. So I felt like going with the Litherland group was not only a smart move, it cost money, it cost a lot of money, but it was worth every penny, because now I can sleep at night knowing that I am 99.999% covered in the fact that if something happens to my wife or myself, it could be dementia, it could be a car accident, right? It could be
you don't know. That's the thing. And
so I want to make sure that my kids have a plan in case we die early. I intend on living until 100 and pissing off and annoying the hell out of my kids and my grandkids.
There you go.
But you never know, right?
You never know. That's the trick, is you never know.
So having a trust in place, especially if you own a home, you need to consider having a trust. Mainly, there's a whole lot of reasons, and we'll go into that at the end of the show.
Yeah.
But really, the whole idea of today is we want to talk about what Proposition 19 is and how that affects people. And the big question, Maggie, is what's your interpretation of Proposition 19?
Okay, so I think that, personal feelings aside, Prop 19's done some really bad things. It's also done some really good things. So I guess let's start with the bad news. Bad news first, right? So prior to Prop 19, we had Prop 13 and Prop 58, which most people don't really know the nuances of, but essentially Prop 13 and Prop 58 allow your children and qualifying grandchildren to receive your property taxes, your low property tax basis, right? So if you purchased your house 50 years ago for $80,000, right? And that was the assessed value, over time, your assessed value, your low property tax basis, you're paying that $3,000 a year in property taxes. When you die and you leave that house to your children, they would have received that $3,000 in low property tax basis.
I have explainer videos that I'll attach to the video as well.
Okay, good.
So
Until Prop 19 came along. So Prop 19 has significantly narrowed that parent to child property tax exclusion. So in order now to claim that property tax exclusion, to keep that low property tax basis, your child must make your home, your primary residence, their primary residence. That's the exception now. And so so how is that going to work going forward? That means if you have a rental property, your rental property is going to be reassessed at your death. If you have a commercial property, that property is going to be reassessed at your death. Any sort of investment property, that will be reassessed at your death. A family vacation home, that cabin, something that's been going down for generations, that will be reassessed at your death. If your home is not your child's primary residence, it will be reassessed at your death. Your home may be partially reassessed, because another bad part of that Prop 19 is that prior to Prop 19, your principal residence could be of any value at all, and your child can still receive it and receive that low property tax basis. After Prop 19, you can only pass the $1 million. So it's the $1 million between the fair market value and the assessed value. So if you had an assessed value of $200,000 and now your home is worth $1.5 million, then it will have a partial reassessment and a new assessment base.
Yep.
So there is a possibility of that too. So that's the bad news, which is a bummer for a lot of people. I don't think they really understood the ramifications of that part of it. And I don't think it was properly explained, properly advertised. It felt sort of buried in the proposition. I think it will be a real shock to a lot of people.
Right. You know, I had this conversation with a lot of people, and most of the conversation was around Proposition 15, which their ploy was to tell people that the money that they're going to raise from Proposition 15 was to go towards education and housing affordability and homelessness. but I had my reasons as to why I didn't think that was a good idea. And there was a foothold incursion proposition, which meant that they were going to attack commercial and industrial property first. But then think about this, right? First they get the commercial and industrial, and then all of a sudden, 5 years later, they go, oh, all apartments, anything that's over, 2 houses is considered an investment property. So now that's considered commercial, or however they want to zone it.
We don't know how they're going to apply any of this. That's the other thing. We don't know.
Right. And then they go back and, 5 years after that, they're going to go, oh, guess what? We just had an emergency meeting, and now no houses, no single family houses, no condos, no townhouses, no ownership has Proposition 13 anymore. That was my fear about Proposition 15, was that they were taking it away from us. And that, if you know what Proposition 13 is, it only raises your assessed value 2%.
2%, yes.
Right. And also within that, they only are allowed to tax you no more than 1% of the total assessed value. So in Santa Clara County, we have 0.79%, or almost 0.4%, which is less than 1%, which is fair. But then they have all these ad valorem and assessment taxes that we pay, and
keep adding on every year. Yes.
So we tell people, think about 1.5%, because that's about what you pay. So my fear with that was no, right? Proposition 19 was this big, murky, muddy thing. And they were like, this is good. This is good. And I looked at who was paying for it, and guess who paid the lion's share?
Guess who pays for it? Yes.
Right. So with this the whole removal of all the Proposition 58, 193, 60, and 90 are kind of gone. Right? Or are they gone?
Yeah, well, so 60 and 90, that was the good part of the Proposition 19. So I can't say it was all bad. It was probably the best part of it was Prop 19 has amended the 60 and 90 so that if you're over 55, if you're disabled, if you were part of a natural disaster, now you can transfer your principal residence low property tax rates to anywhere in the state of California. Whereas before, it was either the same county or any of the 9 participating counties in California. So it's really opened it up to the entire state. You can do it 3 times. So before it was just like, pick your one move, and that's it. So now you can decide, hey, I didn't really like moving to San Diego and all the sunshine, right? I'm going to Sacramento, or whatever you decided.
Or vice versa.
Or whatever. And there's no value limits anymore. Prop 60 and 90 really limited it to an equal or lesser value home. But now if you want to retire and go big or go home, right, then you can actually increase the property value if you wanted to. So it wasn't all bad. Right. And that's really the part that the proposition really emphasized was, let's give relief to all of these elderly. Let's give relief to the fire victims. Let's give relief to all of this. And they really buried all of the Prop 19 negative stuff sort of in the middle. You wouldn't have seen that.
And from my point of view, as a realtor, as a real estate agent, it does open it up. So the retired people that are on a fixed income that were afraid to move now have an option, right? They can move pretty much anywhere they want in the state, and it won't affect their property tax. They can transfer that property tax wherever they go. That will allow us to open up the inventory, which has been a huge problem for us the last decade.
Yes.
Right? Part of the reason why California homes are so expensive, especially here in Santa Clara, is one, we have great weather. We have great things to do. There's so much stuff for us to do here.
Right.
There's a lot of VC money. There's a lot of engineering money. There's a lot of big tech companies that come here and they're like, well, I just want to buy a house and live the American dream. And it makes it more difficult because the lack of inventory compared to the demand drives prices up. And now that we can tell retired people, hey, you don't have to live here. You can live down in Santa Cruz County or, Fresno, Bakersfield, or go up to Chico or Humboldt and live out there. That's a huge advantage, because before you were limited to only 9 states or 9 counties, sorry. And that was, and before it was like, oh, well, I have to buy a smaller house. And the idea behind 60 and 90 was, well, you should be an empty nester and you're going to buy a smaller house.
Right.
So,
most people are going to be downsizing at that point, but maybe not.
Right. Now you can go get that mansion down in San Diego on
That's it. We're
Coronado
going to the
Island.
beach. Right. We're going to go get our condo and we're going to retire big because we can.
Because why not? I put money away. I lived conservatively and I invested wisely, and I have this big, huge nest egg, and I'm going to enjoy my mansion in San Diego or wherever it is you want to go. You can go to Palm Beach, Palm Springs.
There you
Palm
go.
Springs, yeah.
Palm Springs, Palm Beach or Palm Springs. Yeah, either one. I'm there. Count me in.
So that's the good stuff. The bad stuff is if you're a landlord and you transfer. How does that affect me if I'm a landlord here in California?
It's not really going to affect. You have to think of it like this. Prop 19 is not going to affect you while you are living. And that's the key difference between Prop 15 and Prop 19. Prop 15 said everything was getting reassessed while you were living. So that would have been a big hit for everyone. Mm-hmm. If you had owned commercial property or a rental property and Prop 13 had passed, everyone would have been affected because the landlords would have been affected, shop owners would have been affected, and they would have just trickled that down and inced rent. So if you had paid
$25 for a sandwich, right? It would have been untenable.
Everyone would have felt that impact, regardless of who you were. So if you had to pick one to pass, Prop 19 would have been the lesser of the two evils. So I've been telling everyone and my clients, Prop 19 allows you to be a little bit selfish. You really have to think about yourself. When you're planning on what you need to do, are you going to retire, move to a different area? Are you ever going to refinance your house and pull money out because you have a plan, you want to remodel, whatever that is? You can't do that if in some of the ways you're trying to protect yourself. And it's going to force everyone into this sort of, well, your kids are going to sell it or one of them's going to move into it. And that's sort of their option, right? So it's really limited what we can do, but it allows people to say, look, it's my house, right? I've paid for it. I lived in it. I can do what I want to do. And well, the kids are going to have to wait. They're going to, they'll get money. They can do what they want with it, but they can be, you're allowing yourself to be a little selfish. It's okay.
Yeah, we have a plan in place, and unfortunately it means that we're eventually going to be moving out of California. And anybody that knows me understands that I have intentions on moving over to the East Coast, and that's okay. My children, I'm a Marine veteran, so I also have the VA, and if you're a veteran, we have a benefit here in California called the CalVet tuition fee waiver. That means any of your children can go to any state school tuition free. They waive that fee, right? So our intention is that money that we're saving is going to go into buying or putting down a down payment on a condo or a townhouse or what have you, wherever my kids go to school, and we're going to buy it with them in partnership. And then their job, not only go to school and have a job, but they're also going to be collecting rent and utilities and paying that property off. And when they graduate, we're going to split that 50-50 and amen, right? Everybody. And then that's their little nest egg to get started in their life.
Perfect. Yeah.
Our house that we live in, that's going to go, all the equity is going to go to another state, right? And that's
and you're probably not alone. It's happening, right? You see it. It's happening.
Before 2020, we were seeing anywhere from 600 to 800,000 people from California moving out. And before that, the Delta was positive. We had 1 million people coming into California, which put more pressure on housing. Now it's upwards of $1 million people leaving the state every year. It's so bad that pods, U-Haul, moving companies,
they're out. Yeah.
You're on a waiting list, right? So as a matter of fact, we just closed on Springer, and the guy was working on Thanksgiving to get rid of all of his stuff to move it because he had to go rent a trailer and take multiple trips to Arizona. That's how crazy it is.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, it's going to change, but eventually it will. But going back to this whole thing, so you mentioned refinances.
Yes.
Does that affect me if I refinance my house?
Well, so let's talk a little bit about the options. So Prop 19 says, okay, so maybe I want to preserve my rental property, right? I want it to pass to my children. I don't want it to be reassessed. So you have a couple of options prior to this going into effect in February. So So in February, Prop 19 is in effect. And after that point, there are no options for you. That's it. Like it'll just get reassessed. So the cutoff is, February. So one option is you do nothing. Like, Vito, you're a perfect example, right? You have younger kids, you're thinking of the future. So this is not going to affect you. You're taking your house, you're going to sell it, and you're going to move on. So there's nothing for you to really do. But what if you already had those rental properties for your kids? They're already in school. You've already purchased them. You don't want them to get reassessed in 50 years when it goes to the kids. So now you're thinking, well, okay, I could deed the properties to the kids right now and just gift them the kids their gift early. The problem with doing that is, well, now it's the kids' property. You have zero control over your property. And if you've got good kids, and so they'll share the rent with you. But what if you don't have good kids? What if you're worried about that child who's not so good, or you're not so worried about your child, you're worried about their significant other that they're going to marry and find out. And so then maybe that's not the ideal option. So another option is actually moving that rental property or even your primary residence, your vacation property, into an irrevocable trust. It's a standalone trust from what your trust would already be. It's an irrevocable trust, but there's no changes allowed, right? That's what the word is. It's irrevocable. You can't make any changes. Your child is the beneficiary. So in your case, you move that rental over. Your child is entitled to all of the rents. So if you wanted to share 50-50, you're essentially making your child give that money to you. You're trusting that that's going to happen. But in a lot of cases, again, we're looking at that situation. But it's going to preserve the property tax basis. They'll get the step up in basis. So in 50 years from now, no reassessment. It freezes it for them. Doing that irrevocable trust, though, has two big consequences. One, if there's a mortgage on the property and the mortgage lender finds out, they could accelerate the mortgage and do a due on sale. So then if you don't have the resources to do that, that's sort of a bummer. The other big one is you can't refinance. If it's in an irrevocable trust, a lender will not lend to an irrevocable trust.
Wow.
And so big consequences. That's why I'm saying Prop 19, you have to think about how it's going to affect you during your lifetime versus maybe how it affects the kids. Because it's nice having that rental income. Maybe you do want to refinance, pull some money out, redo some things, pay off a mortgage on another property, go on vacation, have just a fund available if something were to happen for, catastrophe, health, whatever that is, pay for college. You can't do that if you've locked it up in an irrevocable trust. However, if you're 90 and you're looking at the next 10 years, 15 years, maybe not making it that far, this might be a good way to preserve it for your kids in the next, 5-10 years versus maybe 50 for you, Vito. So there's options, very limited
Let's
options.
call it 60.
Yeah, there you go. 60,
No.
70.
Right.
But you see what I mean? There's
right. So it really depends on the scenario and what you're going at. I did not know about that whole irrevocable trust. You can't refinance on it. That's ridiculous. And that really limits your options. Can you get like a home equity line? You can't get a home equity line on commercial. So you have to get, that money gets kind of tied up and locked in.
Yeah. So it really is going to narrow who's going to really, that's why I'm saying, even though it's a big deal for everyone, it's really narrowed the exception, but it's really narrowed the options. Most people are going to want the property and the rental to be available for them during their lifetime. That's why they got it. They needed the rental income for their retirement. They want to supplement their lifestyle, whatever that is. And it's really the next generation that's going to feel the hit on this, unfortunately.
So stressful.
I know.
All right. So you mentioned a lot about the inheritance. Let's take this from a point of view of if I was an inheritee of my mom's property. Let's say that she had a house here in San Jose and she passed on it and I inherited it. What are my options? What are some things that I should be thinking about right now?
So, did your mom pass away in this scenario already?
No.
Okay, so your mom is still living, so it's up to her to decide what she's going to do with it, right? So you don't get a choice. But if you said, hey, mom, you know what? I really want to live in your house. These are the conversations we're now going to force each other to have over Christmas now or Hanukkah, right? These uncomfortable conversations. But hey, mom, I really want your house. It means a lot to me. It has a big sentimental value, whatever the reason is. That's the only way you're going to keep mom's low property tax basis, right? Is if you've now said, I want your house. I want your primary residence to now be my primary residence. That's the only way it's going to happen. And so you have to consider too now, what if you have siblings? Vito, do you have siblings?
I do.
Yeah. See, now what if more than one of you wants that mom's house? How are you guys going to decide who's going to keep it?
Well, that's really up to mom and dad, right? I mean, mom and dad have the real say.
Yeah. So you guys get to all sit around the table and have these uncomfortable conversations. And my guess is there's probably one child that is more likely to want it or need it, because it's typical where some of them have moved out of state. They're already set up. They've already have houses. They have a plan, right? They're moving out of state, right? They're going to leave. And there's one that just never really got it together. They're living with mom and dad. So maybe that's part of the plan, is eventually they were going to live there anyways. So maybe there's really nothing for them to do because that was part of the plan. Or the siblings are going to sell it anyway. So it wouldn't affect them no matter what. Yeah, maybe they would have kept it as a rental if they had an option, but now there's no option. Now they will sell it.
Well, the option's there. You're just going to
give more
or
you pay, or you pay more in property taxes. I mean, that's an option, right? The siblings keep it rented, but they're not going to get as much in their rental income now because they'll have that higher property taxes.
One of my agents does property management for her mom, and she owns a bunch of houses. And I have to have this conversation with her and say, you need to figure this out. You better go get this stuff put into a trust and have a game plan put together so you know what you're getting into. Because that's the thing. It's like you have to be able to have that conversation with people and understand what the pathways are, what scenarios best fit your needs, and then move forward on that. And that's Absolutely. The exact same reason why I forced us to have a trust. We have a living trust for this house and all of the stuff that we own, because you never know, right?
You never know.
Now we need a tactical advice from you to understand how to change that scenario, how to take our plan and adjust that, right?
Yes.
So you mentioned vacation homes, but what happens if you're a renter? If you're renting a house or a condo or what have you, is this going to affect you in any way?
There's a possibility it could affect you in the future. So let's take your example with your mom. She passes away. She had a rental and you've decided you wanted to keep it. Then your property taxes will be reassessed if she didn't put it in that trust, right? Because it's not your primary residence. It wasn't your mom's primary residence. So one way to make sure it stays a rental with that increased property tax value is to trickle down and increase the rental values. So we don't know yet, but there may be we may increase inventory because everyone is selling, but we may also increase the rental market a little bit because the landlords are going to trickle that down, right? My property tax increase. So guess what? I want to make a little bit more money and be able to have some. So your rent might be going up, which is sort of hard to believe in the Valley right now.
But the thing is, you didn't buy a rental property so that you can pay property taxes. You bought a rental property so that you could create an income stream for your family. And now that option is being taken away, or your margins have become so low,
they're so small. Would you really do that? I don't know. Right?
I don't know. But that's the thing, is like the whole thing I talked about with Proposition 13 and the Proposition 15, putting the foothold thing. When you increase property taxes on commercial property, a strip mall, that means the renters, the landlord, the owner has more property taxes that they have to pay, which means that the renters, the small shop owners, are going to have to pay more rent. And more rent means more expensive sandwiches, more expensive dry cleaning, more expensive coffee, more expensive everything. And you don't realize it, but you're like, hey, I think this is fair. But then after you think about it, I don't want to pay $25 for a sandwich. I don't.
There's a whole trickle down effect that's going to happen. You have to weigh the whole cause and effect of everything.
And that's what scares me about this Proposition 19. We're going to see a massive problem with people not being able to afford rent because of this choice that we made, right? Good or bad. I'm not here to tell you that was a good thing or a bad thing. We just have to figure out how to work through it.
Yeah, and I think here in the Valley we're sort of isolated, but if you look at some of the other communities, you know, like Fresno and Bakersfield and some of the lower income, I mean, their plan is to pass down the home to the children so they can afford to live there. If the children get their home, even if it's a lower value and it gets reassessed and the property taxes increase, you know, 3-4 times, they're not going to be able to afford that home. Even if they wanted to, they wouldn't be able to afford it. So I think it's going to affect disproportionately kind of a lower income family, a lower income area. It's going to have a disproportionate effect. It's not going to impact us necessarily as much as maybe it would, you know, Redding County or Fresno County or something like that. I think that's my opinion personally.
So not getting political or not, because this is not a political show. And I tell everybody, I have friends on both sides of the aisle. I tell everybody, I love you no matter who you vote for. It doesn't matter. And I respect your decision. But at the end of the day, what we have done is further separate the haves and have-nots.
Absolutely, 100%. 100%.
Without the intention of it, because again, it was a muddled ballot, right?
I absolutely. I think that it was very unclear. And the way it was advertised, I think was a little unfair. Even when I read it, I was like, well, this sounds great. Yeah, let those over 55ers have more opportunities. And we just saw the fires like decimate half the state. So yeah, we need them to be able to move and keep. That's fair. They shouldn't have to have their taxes go up. So that sounds great. And then buried in there is like, oh, I'm not going to be able to inherit my parents' home or my grandparents' home because that was our plan, because I can't afford to live here and buy a house, even as an attorney, right? So that's taken a toll on a lot of people, but it's not really for me to decide. It's for my parents. It's for my grandparents to decide. They need that rental income because they need to supplement their retirement. So maybe I will be moving with you, Vito. I don't know.
And I see the big picture of this. I truly do. I see it from the 500-foot view of, well, the people that have the money, they can afford it. So let's just increase the rent, or increase the property taxes so that it's just above painful. And then in a couple of years, once we run through, you know, the 30% of the population that typically rotates through and buys another house or moves or what have you, job transfers, death, what have you, divorce, that will become the new norm, and people will kind of get used to it. I've lived in different areas. I've been to different areas. I'm from Canada originally, so I have no loyalty to California. And if they want to tax me, I just will quietly go away.
And you're probably not the only one. So one really important thing to note about Prop 19, which I think is a huge thing, is, again, it's going into effect in February. And the Board of Equalization has issued no guidance on how they're going to enforce it. So we're sort of planning in the dark, doing the best we can to give some guidance to our clients without really knowing actually how it's going to be impacted. So, and I don't anticipate them giving us any guidance prior to February. There's, you know, all of the holidays happening. It's the government, all of those sort of things. I don't even know if they thought this was going to pass. So changes in the future, they might be required. I've heard rumors that they're already gearing up to challenge it because of the number of propositions that were changed, which apparently was unconstitutional. You can't affect 4 different propositions in one proposition. Whether or not that will be successful, I don't know. My crystal ball is broken. I don't know.
Yeah,
anymore, so
we're still fighting to figure out who's gonna be president, and
yeah,
I'm so done with that story. I stopped watching the news years ago, so I kind of chip in every once in a while, and you know, I get these opinions from both sides, and I'm like, I don't care.
It's so polarized now. It's probably a good idea.
Right. All right, Maggie. So now that we scared the hell out of all our viewers,
I'm sorry.
What's a good way to protect yourself if you're a landlord or a homeowner, or what's the best way to do this?
Well, I think the biggest thing is considering sort of what your ultimate goal is and what your plan is for you and for your lifetime is going to come first, right? Do you need the rental income? Is it more important for you to have the house and the rental income and all of the flexibility to move throughout the state of California versus making sure your kids get that low property tax basis? I think that's the question. You know, do you need it now versus ensuring your kids' future of having that available to them? That's where you're going to sort of funnel into what should I be looking at? Is this going to affect me?
Right. So like the easy answer is the minute you gather your children around for Thanksgiving or Christmas and say, when I die, this is my plan. And when I die, your intention is you either make a decision to keep the property that we're going to gift to you or heir to you. Yeah. Whatever. Or you take it and sell it because the property taxes are going to be so outrageously expensive that you're not going to be able to make the rent. So it's completely up to you. But here's our plan going forward. We have 10 houses, we have 3 children, and you guys are going to divide it up this many ways, and you figure out how you're going to deal with it because we're going to be dead. I don't care.
I always tell everyone, well, what do you care? You're going to be dead. And so when you're looking at your trust, right? You know, you've got a trust, you're looking at your trust, and you know, let's say you've got 3 kids, and you know that one of the 3 wants your house, your primary residence. And so what you can do is amend your trust, build in a gift for the child that they get this house, they get the property, but you want to equalize it with the other 2. So you need to build that in before you go. Otherwise, you haven't avoided a reassessment at all. Because if you've kicked the can till after you've passed away, and now one sibling is buying it out from their other 2 siblings, there's no exception for that, regardless of what proposition it is. So you haven't avoided the reassessment there. So having these conversations, these really uncomfortable conversations over Christmas, over, holidays are the best time to have them, right?
Well, you're going to fight with your family anyway, so get it over and done with.
Do it. These are the conversations you need to have so that you can, and having a child say, Mom, I want to have your house. And the parent not say, like, how rude, I'm not even dead yet, sort of thing. It's like,
well, not my bones before I'm dead.
Right, yeah, they're not trying to be rude. They're trying to plan for their future as well. So being open to these conversations, if you're the parent, is really helpful as well.
And the hardest thing for an adult child to do is have that conversation with their
100%.
Right, and how do you broach that subject? And you just have to pick your battles, and maybe you plant a seed today and you have a little conversation, you push that rope forward, you keep pushing the rope over multiple conversations. And then once they're ready to fall over the edge and start having that conversation, they'll come to you, right? Because what they're thinking, and understand the generations, right, is like, don't talk to me about money. This is my money. We don't talk about money. And a lot of people do that, right? The rich, the uber rich, they talk about money all the time. This is how we plan. This is how we do it. But if you're a hardworking retiree, you're generally speaking, you don't talk to your children about money or how to deal with legacy and how to deal with trusts and how to deal with all. Do you know that in Santa Clara County, of all the homeowners, I did a survey years ago, about 5 years ago. Of all the homeowners, only 5% are under a trust.
Oh my gosh, that completely terrifies me. Oh my gosh, that terrifies me.
Because the alternative is your house is going to go into probate.
Oh, that's going to cost you way more money than doing anything, right? Yeah. Oh, geez.
It's because the generation doesn't talk about what happens next. They don't want to talk about death and taxes and money. And that's the thing, is like, if you have a parent that's living, you owe it to yourself to talk to them about what their legacy plan is. And as uncomfortable as it is, as morbid as it is, it's a fact. You said it right in the beginning of the show. The only two things that are certain in this life are death and taxes, right?
Death and taxes.
And that's what we're talking about today.
Yes.
And how does it work? How did it work up until February 1st?
How did it work,
2021?
right? Yeah.
And how does it work now? And how can we best attack this? How can we best strategize this to make sure that it's seamless? Because when your parent passes, the last thing you want to do is think about money, think about taxes, think about what the property is, and think about all this other stuff. I've done it multiple times with friends.
Yeah, absolutely. Even before that, if somebody goes into a coma, somebody gets hit by a car, somebody has Alzheimer's, and you see the trickling, bills aren't getting paid, the house isn't doing well, and now the child is taking over for their parents. If you've hit that point, it's too late for you to do an estate plan. It is too late. And that's the scary thing, right? It's too late for you to do anything. You have no power to help. And that's what you want to do, is you want to be able to help, right? You want to empower the parent to help the child to be able to help the parent. Right.
And I've seen it multiple times. And it's so painful to watch that child. And if you're an older adult with an adult child and you're watching this, the most important thing you can do is have that conversation with them, because God forbid, I do not wish it on you. If you fall under the diseases of just dementia or Alzheimer or anything that takes your capabilities away, it is the worst thing for your child to go through. Believe me, because all they see is a shell of who you were, and you're gone, and they have to adult up and go and take care of you every day. And they go home crying and just in an emotional turmoil. And then when you finally pass, you have this big fog of, oh my God, what happened? This last year or 5 years or 10 years have just been the worst 10 years of my life. Now I have to go and play catch up and try to figure out how to settle your estate and do taxes and do all this stuff, as well as bury you. And it's the worst thing you could do for your child if you don't have a legacy plan.
Yes.
And I'm not saying that as a salesman. I'm saying that as
you're
father.
you're being realistic. Absolutely.
Right. I want my children. I don't want my children to think of my passing as a traumatic experience and there's got to be a better way. I don't want it to be like, oh, this sucks that dad died. Yeah, I'm going to deal with the emotional side. But now everything's been planned out, and at least he did that for me. Right. At least I had the courage enough to say, yes, I'm going to die one day. What's my plan? And not like I'm a millionaire, but at the same time, I still have certain assets my children need to have.
Yes, absolutely.
And seeing my friends' parents go through it, seeing my wife go through it twice in 7 days and having to go through all that, it just really activated me to learn more about this. So the whole trust thing has just been a godsend.
Absolutely. Oh, I agree. I agree with you, Vito. Absolutely.
So I'm really pitching you.
I know, right? Yeah, I agree with you perfectly. Here I have. So a common question I always get is whether I really need an estate plan. That's a common question I get. Like, do I really need one? Right. So usually I have people ask these questions to themselves, and that'll determine whether you need an estate plan. All right. Do you own real property? Right. If you own real property, you need an estate plan. Do you have more than $166,250 in other assets? Any assets? Okay. Do you have
retirement?
Anything,
car,
right?
Jewelry.
Do you have minor children? Right. And you're thinking about, if I died tomorrow, who is going to take care of my minor children? Not my in-laws. Right. So that's something to consider. Do you want to control where your assets go when you pass away? Right? Maybe you don't want your children to get it. Those good for nothing children. I want it to go to charity. I want it to go to one child over the other. I have a plan.
There's nothing wrong with that either. Warren Buffett is doing that.
There's nothing wrong with it. It's your money. Do what you want with it.
Absolutely.
It's what you want to do with it. And are you over the age of 18? So if you answered yes to any of those questions, you need an estate plan. Whether you need a trust or not is a different question. So everyone over the 18 should have the bare minimum of, a will, a power of attorney, and a healthcare directive. That's your incapacity plan. If something happened to you and you're off at college, who's going to be making your health decisions? Mom or dad can't do it anymore because you're an adult, right? Something like that happens, you're driving and you get in a car accident, who's going to be paying your bills until you're out of the hospital, right? When we're able to travel again, who's making those decisions?
I've heard those stories where kids are off at college and they get in an accident and they don't have a healthcare directive.
Everyone's panicking, right? What do you do?
Yeah, what do you do?
You just assume that parents can make these decisions still. You come home, you're still living at home. It doesn't work that way anymore because you're an adult. So you maybe don't need a trust, right? You don't own real property. Everything's in a bank account or a brokerage account, right? It's your first job. You don't need a complicated trust, but you need a plan, some sort of a plan. So I'm not going to oversell you and say, hey, you need this huge thing. But if you have real property, you have to have a trust, because it's the only way, it is the absolute only way you can pass your house to your children or your heirs or whoever you're leaving it to in the state of California without triggering probate. You're not going to find a home, or especially around here, that's less than that $166,000 value. You're just not going to. So that's why I'm just saying you have to have a trust. And so then you get to have all these fun, uncomfortable conversations about who's going to manage it for me, who's going to inherit it. That's the easiest part about just, coming to the office and starting it, or, attending a webinar, the free webinar. We have that on our website. Having both the parent and the child attend so that everyone sort of understands what's going on. You can all be part of the conversation. It's better to have one than not, for sure.
Yeah. And while you were talking, I was just thinking about all the other friends that I've talked to about this. I have friends that work for the county and they have trust lawyers that set this up for them for free, and people that work for Facebook and LinkedIn and even, Quicken. And they're like, oh, our lawyers take care of the trust for you. And I'm like, in the back of my head, I'm thinking, yeah, that's okay. Do they really have your best interests, or are they just going to sign a boilerplate trust and say, here you go, fill in all the information and we'll take care of it, don't worry about it? Are they really going to go and peer into your needs and desires and what your strategies are and what happens if and all this stuff? And I've always had these conversations with them, and I've sent a ton of business to the group because it's something I trust in and I believe in, and I don't make a dime from you guys, right?
Nope,
I do it because you can't. You're not allowed to give me any kind of.
I can't share with Vito, so he's.
That's called a bribe.
Yeah,
and that's illegal. But in my heart of hearts, I want everybody I know to understand what I know, how to protect themselves and how to protect their legacy. And that's I can't trust somebody that, like, a company would say, oh, we do it for you and it's free. It's like, you get what you pay for.
You get what you pay for. That is the big thing. Or, what I think a lot of people don't understand is, what if you have a question? You have a quick question, you're at the bank, you're talking to your broker, or your mom, something happened to your mom, she's in the hospital, and you're not really sure who to turn to. Our clients can call us for free. They can email us for free and ask those questions. We want our clients to feel empowered and know how to use their documents to be able to empower themselves to make sure they're making the correct decision. They can come into the office. It's been 5 years. Let's review it and make sure it still works. It's still who you want as your agents, or whatever the question is. And we don't charge our clients for any of that. If you get the $500 or $1,500 trust, down the street or whatever, anytime you have a question, it's going to be followed with a bill, right? You're going to get that bill in the mail. And I've heard a lot of those stories. All I did was call and ask one question and I got a $500 bill in the mail. And I still don't even know if I know that right, if that was the right answer, but I'm too afraid to call and ask or follow up,
And you offer, the best part about it is you offer these webinars and you offer these video and classes, and you have the ice cream social, which is, I've never done, but I need to go do because it's it's social. I need to be social. But the thing is, it's like, what happens if you get to another job and you're making more money and then you can afford to buy a house? But I don't know if I should buy another house. You want to talk to your accountant, you want to talk to a tax guy, but you also want to talk to your lawyer, because it all kind of meddles together, because you don't know. And we're not experts, right? I have a financial advisor that takes care of my stocks, because I don't care about stocks. I don't really care. If you want to learn about real estate, you talk to the expert about real estate.
Exactly.
If I have a question about trust, I'm going to call you. And
I use the mechanic example, right? I'm not a mechanic. I don't know anything about a car. I trust my mechanic to take care of my car, right? That's
right.
When I have a question, I'm calling them. What's that noise? I don't know what it is. So
go take it to Jiffy Lube and pay for them to replace all those plastic parts.
That's your car. That's just your car, your $10,000 car that's depreciating. How are you going to feel when it's a life decision? Your mom has fallen, she's in the hospital, and she can't go home. Now, what are we going to do? They can call the office and talk to one of us about it. We can give them options, right?
Yeah. And it's the biggest fear here is like, well, I plan on getting to a trust. I'm going to get to a trust. I've been meaning to do it for the last 3 years. Well, I'm going to tell you right now, don't tie your shoes. Call a lawyer and get your trust done, because you never know, if you turn around the corner, you're going to get hit by a train, right?
You never know. I've had that scenario happen where I've met with couples, and then the next call I get is so-and-so's, husband's died, wife has died, and we're in the middle of making the trust, right? We're in the middle of planning it, but it hasn't been signed, so it's not any good. Nope. That hurts my feelings when that happens.
And you don't have a power of attorney to be able to sign for that person. You don't have anything set up. And here's the other thing too. And when you sit down in the webinar, you'll learn about how Medicare, Medi-Cal works, and how the trust can protect you and your estate. Once you have been diagnosed with a terminal affective disease such as dementia or Alzheimer's, or you're in a coma, it's too late.
It is too late. Yeah, that is so true.
It's too late. There's nothing you can do.
That is absolutely the worst phone call. The worst email is talking to a child or getting the document. Maybe they did get that trust. They did it through their attorney at their work. They got it on LegalZoom or whatever. And they send the documents over, and we're trying to see, can we qualify them for Medi-Cal to save them money so that they don't have to liquidate all of their assets? And I look at it, and then I have to say no. And it's too late for us to do anything about it. There's nothing you can do at that point. And that's the worst feeling in the world, is we can't help you. It's too late.
Yeah.
It's the worst feeling.
And as much as we all want to do something to help, that's why we have a trust set up. That's why you need to get a trust set up. If you're watching this, stop what you're doing. Call Maggie right now.
Yeah. I'm sitting here with bated breath right next to my phone.
But I implore you, and it's going to cost money. It's not going to be cheap, but it's worth every stinking penny you pay for it, because you know that you have your directives, your trust, your plan of action set up, and you don't have to worry about it. Since I met the Litherland group, and I'm not doing this to kiss your butt or anything. I have felt so at ease about the next steps in the journey if something happens, right? Because I know that my kids are taken care of.
Yeah,
right?
It's the peace of mind. That's what it is, right? And that it's the peace of mind, not only knowing you have the documents set up, but that if something happened to you, your wife could call the office and would have somebody to help. Your kids would be able to call the office and have somebody to help. So it's having both, right? It's not just having the documents. It's having a relationship with an office that you feel comfortable working with, just like you would with anything, right? I mean, you could meet with me and be like, I don't really like Maggie. That's fine too, right?
Everybody loves Maggie though. Maggie's great.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like anything, right? You find a real estate agent you like. You're not going to like all of them. You find an insurance agent, you're not going to like all of them. So it won't hurt my feelings if you meet with me and you're like, But so it's important to have the documents, but it's also important to have a good relationship with the attorney that you're working with, the office that you're working with. And so having both.
And your company's been around for decades.
Almost 40 years.
You're not going anywhere.
Not going anywhere.
You're not a fly-by-night lawyer. You're not a young, you're young, but you're not like a young staff group of people that are just trying to make everything all technology. You all understand and retrain yourself on what's going on with the current laws and how that affects everybody and how that affects in the strategy. And you'd have to sit down and watch the webinar.
Yeah, no, we do. We have, and that's something that we really pride ourselves in is our client education. So we have the webinars set up because we're not able to be in person. So we've transferred everything online, but we have our review workshops. We have our Medi-Cal workshops. We have our trustee and power of attorney school. So if you don't want to have these conversations with your kids, let us have the conversation and let them just watch the webinar. And if they have questions, they can talk to us about it. So we really genuinely are trying to empower our clients to understand their documents and how they work, their kids understand how they work, and be able to ask questions. You know, we're not trying to hide the ball in any way. You can attend the Living Trust webinar and have all of your questions answered.
Yep. And you can write it up yourself if you want.
I have had those consultations as well.
You know, here's the thing. I used to be a do-it-yourselfer. I still kind of am. And I would do a lot of stuff in my house. Like I replaced windows. I redid the floors. I redid the kitchen twice. I've redone all my bathrooms. I do everything myself because I love doing stuff with my hands. And what I'm realizing now is the time that I take away from focusing on work, focusing on family, focusing on everything, that energy could be focused on a better life versus doing everything myself. I still enjoy doing stuff myself, but it's better to bring in somebody that knows how to do it, right? Knows how to do the right thing and knows how to get right to the scene of the problem. And that's why you hire real estate agents, why you hire a tax accountant, is why you hire a mechanic, because they know how to get to the problem, fix it, right? I had a thermocouple break on my dryer because my kids, who have to do their laundry their own, don't clean out the lint filter and it overheats.
Oh, nice.
And I've had it done 3 or 4 times. And every time it costs $250. And I'm like, $250. The guy comes in, spends 5 minutes, talks to me for a little bit, and he charges my credit card. $250, boom, out the door. I'm like, it's not the cost of the time, it's the cost of the experience and knowledge that you're hiring.
Right.
And when I sat down in that seminar, which is the webinar now, I felt like it was the cost of the knowledge and the feeling that I had that my money was very well spent, knowing that my family has a legacy plan laid out for the next generation. So didn't mean to sell you.
No, yeah, that was good. I think that's everything.
I learned about the healthcare directive. I was like, my son just turned 18 this month.
Yep.
So you need to hook me up and figure out how to do all
Let me know.
stuff.
It's really easy. I can email you. And if he's here he is still here. He's not at school yet. He's a senior in high school. Oh yeah. So we'll send you the form. He fills it out. He'll just swing by and sign it, and then you'll have one. So yeah.
Okay. Are there any special announcements or events that you'd like to talk about?
We have so we do have a well, I gotta find out before I say it. Yeah. So and the Prop 19 ones we're really limiting to clients just because we don't have the bandwidth to do the whole population. So in January, we have the webinars, we have the seminars, which are now webinars. The next one will be in January, on January 14th. It's open to everyone. So if you want to sign up for it, all you have to do is go online, you register, we'll send you a Zoom link. So that way you can just, log in right before the webinar. It's all online now. So you don't have to wear pants. You don't have to tell us you're not wearing pants. The cameras are off. All that stuff.
You can wear your slippers and shorts and sweats.
You have to provide your own snacks. We're not providing snacks. But that's
that sucks because When you went to that seminar, you had a nice spread,
I
continental
know.
breakfast.
I miss
It was
it
awesome.
too. Yeah. But so, it is online for now. And hopefully next year we'll be back. And so this is a good chance for you to have these conversations over the holidays, and then everyone attend the webinar in January and start the year fresh. Make it a goal for yourself starting in January to maybe do that estate plan or get those questions answered to going forward.
Amazing. Maggie, this has been such a great hour. Thank you so much for spending all this time with us.
Yeah, no problem.
Um, it's great to be able to chat with you and learn a little bit more about you and get your personality out, because you really do a good job at this.
I'm
But
not your typical attorney. How's that?
you are not a typical attorney. That is absolutely correct. And I think the benefit to what we just talked about today was that you put it into layman's terms that I can understand, right?
Yeah.
And I'm semi-educated. I'm not legally educated at that, but I have spent a lot of time and energy learning about the propositions and trusts and how that really affects you. And today, the whole hour that we spent about Proposition 19 and learning about trust and how that's going to affect you, I think it was fantastic. So
Good. Well,
appreciate your time today.
Yeah, thank you for having me. It's been really great.
All right.
I'll come back. We can talk about other things anytime.
Absolutely. We could do this monthly. This is awesome.
Yeah, no problem.
All right, everybody. Have a great day. We'll
Thank
see you out
you.
there. Do me a favor real quick. Take 2 seconds and hit the subscribe button if you haven't already. Also hit the like, the little thumbs up, and the little bell so you'll be notified of upcoming videos.